I hope I have this on. Yes, I do. Probably safe to say you need to have it on to be able to hear. I think it is safe to say that we in our culture are less, shall I say, hospitable than in ages gone by. What I mean by that is this. A lot of people really enjoy, and I'm one of them, the reruns of Andy Griffin. I think it's just a great, great show. How many times have you watched that and you have seen there are always people at their house on the front porch? They're just hanging out. They're playing music. They're talking. Maybe at the barber shop. They're just sitting around talking. There are times and gatherings where they're just together. They have people in their homes and they're getting to know the lives and hanging out with everybody. We do that less now, I think, as a culture than we ever have. And there's a reason, I think, for that. I think there is far more to keep us busy than ever has been before. And in that way, we become very disconnected. We're involved in all kinds of things, and we've become disconnected. I heard I believe it was a radio talk show host who, I don't know if it was a sports channel or just a news talk, but he said, I was in a restaurant with my family. And he said, we have this rule that when we go out and we're sitting there together, we put all of our business phones away and all of our every other thing. We just sit and talk. And he said, during that meal, we looked over and there's another family sitting over there with 3 children. And through the entire meal, every single one of them he said, when I got up to leave, I walked by and I said, did you all even notice each other today? He said, it just amazes me. And that's what's happened in our society. We can connect without being connected. Now, I haven't seen this, but I've heard people who say they have seen it. A dating couple sitting in a restaurant across a table texting each other. I've not seen it. But I certainly believe that it happens. A Christian home is hospitable. For just a few minutes, think with me about this concept of hospitality. It is a word that is used about 5 times in the New Testament, and I'm going to pronounce the word for you. Philoxenos. It is a compound word, philios, meaning love of a friend, and xenos, which means a stranger. Hospitality is the way that we have translated, the people have translated philoxenos. Literally it means the love of strangers. Or even more accurately, showing brotherly love to a stranger. You know what is also interesting to me? The word hospitality has a direct connection to hospital. Same derivation. You know what happens in a hospital? People who don't know each other are in rooms. They are strangers to the doctors and strangers to the nurses. And yet what do those, particularly the nurses, doctors may have known them in visits constantly, but those nurses, especially the first time, what are they doing? They are dealing with strangers, meeting their needs and sharing with them as they need. That is hospitality. For just a minute, let's think about hospitality from Scripture. Look at the text just read in 1 Peter chapter 4. Here's what Peter tells me that I am supposed to know about hospitality. Here is a key to seeing what is in text. One of the things we've been discussing in my Bible class on Sunday morning in here on the Gospel of Mark, often we will run into things and we will talk about, well now, there's nothing in Scripture by accident. So if it's not there accidentally, why is it there? Well, maybe we can't figure it out. Maybe we don't know. But here's what I do know. We're supposed to look at it. We are supposed to understand that it is there not by accident. And therefore, if it's not by accident, maybe I can understand why it is there. That's one way that we look at Bible study, trying to see what is there and why it is there. The key for today is this. When you look at texts in paragraphs, you can learn that a paragraph involves a unified group of meanings. I am teaching an English class for the Wellspring Homeschooling Co-op. And what we're learning right now is this. How do you write a paragraph? And how do you write paragraphs to get to an article? And eventually, how do you write paragraphs in order to get to a speech? And what we've been studying is paragraphs. Here is a paragraph, verses 7 through 11. And right in the middle of this paragraph, he talks about hospitality. Here's what that means. Everything in the paragraph is connected to every other thing in the paragraph. Here's the first thing I'm supposed to know about hospitality. Hospitality is a serious subject. Look how he starts in verse 7. The end of all things is near. He puts the concept of hospitality right here in a context where he talks about the end of all things. Now, what we need to understand, Peter is writing during a time in which Christians are being persecuted very roughly. It's a tough time. In fact, he starts out in chapter 1 talking about these fiery trials that you're going through. And there's nothing like persecution that might tend to make you want to cloister yourselves over in a corner somewhere and avoid problems. Just get away. And what does he say? We're at the end of all things. You continue to be hospitable. I think he's talking about this particular situation, but I think he's also talking about in concept the end of time. Not that it is right now, but we are in the end times. We are living in the last age. There is no other age to come. God is not going to reveal another word, another covenant, another way to live. This is it. From here we go to there. From here we go to heaven. This is the end. We're at the last times. It may be another 10,000 years, but it is still the last time. And in this last time, we need to be hospitable people. It is a serious thing. Therefore, he says, notice the connection, verse 7, between hospitality and prayer. Hospitality and prayer. Maybe he's saying, pray that you will be more hospitable. Maybe he is saying, in your hospitality, pray. Maybe he's saying both. Maybe we should pray that God would help us to be more hospitable. And then in our hospitality, as we are with people, we should pray together, because that shows our hospitable spirit. Prayer is serious. Number 2, prayer is a loving act. Look at verse 8. Have fervent love. That's the number one thing. Why? Because love covers a multitude of sins. Here's what I think is going on. If you love someone, if you really love someone, you don't have any problem opening your life up to that person. we love each other, we ought to open our lives. That's what hospitality is. Hospitality is an opening of ourselves. That's why the concept of hospitality most often is connected to one's house. Because what is your house? Isn't that your refuge from the world? Isn't your house the place that you run to get away from all the distractions, all the problems, all the nasty stuff, and we can protect ourselves in the walls? Here's where we are most secure, most happy, most excited about living, right here at home. So if you let somebody in your home, that means you really love them. That means you've allowed them into your most special place, your house. And you have given of yourself to them. And guess what? The more we do that, the more we cover over the sins of people. In other words, when someone has had a problem, someone has sinned, someone is trying to get back into a good relationship, the more we open up our lives to them, the more we cover that sin in our minds. We forget all of that, and we're spending time with who they are now. And number two, the more they are involved in our lives, the more we help them forget that and become connected to the family. Hospitality covers a multitude of sins, but only, verse 9, if we do it without grumbling. If we do it without grumbling. My mother is, for me, the greatest vision of a hospitable Christian that I have ever known. Because this, I remember, it happened when I was about 12 or 13 years old. Here's what happened. Alabama Christian College, which is now Faulkner University, at that time was a 2-year school, junior college. My dad worked for Chipola Junior College in Marianna, Florida, where I was raised, where our family was. And one weekend, Alabama Christian College was scheduled to come and play Chipola on a Saturday evening. And they did. They came, and I went to the game, and it was great. And Sunday morning, the team stayed and they assembled with us for worship. And after that assembly on Sunday, the entire team came to my house for lunch. Any of you ladies just get a chill? Ooh. An entire basketball team came to my house. Mutt Dog Sandifer, that's what he was called. About 6'9". He was part of that team. The others were like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Those great big old guys come walking into my house. Mom is going to feed every one of them. I also remember on a number of occasions, we would go home for lunch. Dad would show up with 3 or 4 more. He didn't tell her. She just welcomed them in. I don't recommend that. I've learned that's not smart. You probably have too. But here's what I do know. My mom was a hospitable person. Without grumbling, it covers a multitude of sins. Look at verses 10 and 11. Not only is it serious, not only is it a loving act, but this is a talent that has to be practiced. It is a work that we must do. Notice what he says. Right after saying, be hospitable, verse 10, as each one has received a gift, do you think it is possible that hospitality is a talent? I do. I think there are people who just understand hospitality. It just comes naturally to them. It is so easy for them. There are others who have to learn to do it. But notice what he says. We need to do what God has talented us to do. There are things that God has given to one that aren't given to another. I really believe that. But verse 9, hospitality, is not something that I can say, I don't have that talent, so I'm not going to be. Oh, I think there are people more talented at hospitality than others, but I don't think anyone who is a child of God can exclude himself or herself from hospitality. It's not an option. A Christian home is hospitable. The second thing I want us to see in this lesson is this. What am I supposed to expect from hospitality? What am I supposed to expect? Let me give you three things. Number one, I am supposed to expect that the shepherds of this body are hospitable men. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus 1 give us the qualifications for those men who desire to be the shepherds of the Lord's flock in a local setting. And I understand a whole bunch of those things make a whole lot of sense to me. Apt to teach, that is, has the ability to teach. A shepherd needs to be able to teach. One who is self-controlled. You can't have a man who is a shepherd and yet loses his temper all the time. One who rules his household well. That is, he has a family who believes in God and shares his faith and grows up to be children of God. I understand that. But right in the middle of all that, God said, hospitable. Hospitable. You know why that's dangerous? You know why it's tough? Because in fact, our homes are the dwelling place of our family. And God told wives to be the keepers of the homes. That's their home. We're just sort of permitted to live there. That's often how it is. That's their place. But he says, elders, be hospitable. That shows the connection between the elder and his wife who share their homes. Why is it important for elders to be hospitable? Because if shepherds are leading the flock, it means they understand the flock. There's no better way to get to understand individuals than to share in hospitality times. It might be in your house. It might be in their house. It might be in a park. It might be on a trip. Hospitality is a concept that helps a shepherd understand the sheep so they know not where to lead, because God has already decided where to lead. But hospitality helps a shepherd know how to lead, because every sheep is different. And when we think about men who are going to serve as the shepherds of the flock, they need to be men who are hospitable. Number two, Romans chapter 12 and verse 13. Distributing to the needs of the saints, hospitable to one another. I should expect that my brethren, all of us, are hospitable. I should expect that you be hospitable to me, and you should expect that I be hospitable to you. That's what we do because that's who we are, the saints. Distributing, the word literally is, we're going to think about it a little more in depth tonight. The word literally is having fellowship with their needs. How do you do that? By understanding them, by connecting with them, by getting involved with them, by living in life with them. That's how you really get to know people, is by living life with them. We don't get to know people through text messages. We don't get to know the real people through Facebook and the internet because they lie. We get to know people when we are face to face, in conversation, and in activity, and in being together. Finally, turn to Hebrews chapter 13. This is the greatest, well, I'm going to call it the greatest, but it's certainly one of the most interesting passages about hospitality. Let's start in verse 1. Let brotherly love continue. Let brotherly love continue. Philadelphia, the town Philadelphia, that's the word. Philos, love. Adelphos, brothers, love of brothers. Let love continue. Greek word for hospitality is philoxenos, love of strangers. While we're being hospitable, make sure that you let brotherly love continue. That is, don't forget each other. But then look at verse 2. Do not forget to entertain who? Strangers. Why? By doing so, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Literally, the text says, do not forget to be hospitable. You know why? Because there's an unexpected consequence often from hospitality. This is built on Abraham. You remember back in the story of Abraham when God was going to tell him that he and Sarah were going to have a child, and 3 men came to see him. And he's sitting out there by his tent, and he saw these 3 guys walking by. He said, hey, come here, let's eat, I'll take care of you. They were angels sent from God. In fact, you can study this. 3 came to see him. 2 went on to the Sodom and Gomorrah thing. Who was the 3rd? I think it is the person of the Godhead that we later come to know as Jesus. Came to his house. Why? Because he was hospitable. Because he was hospitable. He got an unexpected blessing coming to his house because he was a man of hospitality. There are unexpected blessings that come from being hospitable. But remember this, look at verse 3. Be hospitable even to people who don't have a home to invite you to. Prisoners, those who are mistreated. So what is hospitality? Hospitality, I think, is this. Hospitality is if you can treat a stranger in a way that is loving and caring and invites this person into your life and meets the needs that this person has, you're going to do it to your brethren. So the idea is this, hospitality is invite people into your life. That's what I think hospitality is. Hospitality says, come share my life with me. Let us enjoy life together, rather than going to our homes, closing our doors, and only going out to be with people because we have to. Open up your life. Open up your mind. Open up your heart and invite people in. It expands who we are. It helps us appreciate people more. We come to understand better, and we will deal with people better. A Christian home is hospitable. God has a home. We've sung today about that place that is beyond the sunset. It is the place of God's home where He is inviting me to come be with Him. God has opened up His arms of hospitality to say, I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me. That's hospitality. And it begins by letting Jesus come into your heart. How does He do it? When I accept Him as the Lord of my life and am willing to be baptized to have Him enter my life through His Spirit. When I go into that water and come out, I'm a brand new person because God's Spirit has come to live with me and removed all of my sin. I then have hospitality with God. Some leave that hospitality. If you're ready to come back, we're ready to help you get that as we stand and sing together.